Hi everyone, welcome to FilmDirt. Now I'm going to take a look at the film 2010, the year we make contact, which is a sequel to 2001, A Space Odyssey, directed by Peter Hyams, who's made quite a few interesting films. And as far as I'm aware, Stanley Kubrick had no interest in making a sequel to this, from what I read, or any sequel for any of his films. Now, a few people have suggested I look at this film after seeing my early review of 2001. One of them is John at Movie Collector, who has a fantastic channel. He looks more into the technical side of a film's presentation. I don't do that. I don't profess to be that clever. There's a lot of other guys out there that are doing a fantastic job with that. I just look at the film story, how I see it played out. I'll leave a link to John's channel in the description below. So, how do we get our heads around this film? It can be interpreted in many ways as far as I see it. I've got a few opinions, and I have had a little look over the last few years on what others' opinions are. There's quite a few variations, and I know that some people don't get it, but I think we're not supposed to get it. We're supposed to interpret what we see is out there, and what's this creator angle, and obviously what is the monoliths. And I think we're looking too deeply into it. Just like 2001, it's probably a lot simpler than we think it is, and how it's presented is the confusing part. But it's up to us to just look at all that as a guide, and not everything needs to make sense. Nothing ever does in life, and it doesn't have to make sense here. It's just how things are. Now, I do think there's another world out there, and I don't think it's just this crew going mad or anything like that. I do think we're a small part of something bigger that we don't know about. And there possibly is a creator, and I think we're looking too much at the monolith, which I don't think is really anything other than possibly a placeholder from this other world's creator. Now, I'll try and articulate what I think is going on here. For my opinion, for what it's worth, I think we are like inside a molecule. It's like when they say, is there an end to space, and what is beyond space, and is it really infinite? I think there is an end to space, because if you look at it, say, a bubble or an atom, when scientists mention what atoms are, and there are lots of smaller atoms contained within, I think we're within something like that in a bigger universe, in a bigger world, and we're a self-contained entity, or our galaxy is within that entity, and outside there, if we travel far enough, we'll eventually break the barrier or the bubble, and there's a whole bigger world out there with a creator that we will never know about, not with current technology or with current scientists. I just think nothing can be infinite, can it? So what's happening within our own bubble is just normal evolution. You've got our sun, which is surrounded by other planets, and if you're the perfect distance from the sun, that planet gets nourished, and it develops an atmosphere because it's the right temperature, and moisture creates oceans. And I think with the creation of the Big Bang later on in this film, you have another sun that's been birthed. And with that sun will develop eventually other planets and its own solar system. And eventually one of those planets or more will generate life. And that's the something wonderful that Bowman's ghost mentioned. So it is a lot to think about, and you can go mad thinking about all this, can't you? And it's certainly one of the most interesting pair of films, really, I think is out there. And other individual instances that happen within this sequel, certainly very interesting. And was that a warning shot or a flare or something from the creator telling us not to interfere with new life being developed? Because in our pursuit to further our knowledge, we could really disrupt something that we shouldn't. We're not supposed to be playing God ourselves, are we? Maybe it was a warning that we're going too far. And you've got all of these monoliths working to suck in this planet to create maybe a hole for the sun. What an interesting thing to contemplate. And that brings me on to the film itself, where you've got instances like this that I think are played out much more clearly than they were in 2001. Obviously, from the first scene of the film, there's much more dialogue, and everything is not spoon-fed. I don't mean that obvious, but a lot more information is played out to us, such as the mission to go back to the Europa, where it's quite obvious that there's a good message with the US and Russia working together, and we see that Russia have got their ship working first before the Americans, and the proposal is there to work together to take both crews and all the knowledge that they possess back to the Europa, which is still hanging in space, or the space graveyard, I think they called it, and with the threat of inevitably switching on HAL. And we don't know is HAL devious or genuinely following orders like a computer should. I mean, anyone that's seen the Terminator films will have spent one night at least thinking about what would happen if robots and computers do become too clever and self-aware. Let's not drive ourselves crazy worrying about all this, because we are making them a little bit too clever, in my opinion. I mean, who knows how that's going to play out in the future. But to come back to the present, and we're still exploring things. And the Bowman ghost was certainly interesting. I couldn't put my finger on what that meant. I think it was a ghost. And it's nice that his wife saw it, or believed she saw it, and delivering a warning to Floyd to get out the way, return to Earth. And we can't interfere with evolution, especially with the Big Bang and the Star Child metaphor. I mean, that's a symbol for new life being birthed. Now, it's great that Keir returned to this film. Doesn't look like he's aged at all, even though it was released, is it nearly 20 years later? I think it was 1984 this film was released. So it's quite impressive, really. And all of the cast were fantastic, I thought, and very well cast. I'm not sure about the Russian actors apart from Dame Helen Mirren. They all sold their roles to us. And of course the great Roy Scheider is here as Floyd, and I always thought of him as a great actor. It's all very convincing, and a lot of the acting is very slow and purposeful, and this is a lot of good stuff for any actor to get their teeth into. The effects here overall are, I think, a lot more elaborate than in 2001, and probably don't look as good in places. A lot of the blue screen work here is to a fantastic standard, and it does kind of look convincing. I'm assuming it's blue screen compositing, but it's a lot more elaborate than what was presented in 2001. You've got much more moving parts here and lots more humans in space. But again, it all looks very good. And also, we do get a little sound in space here. Not too much, and not dead silent like it was in 2001. Like booster rockets, and it's all dialed down. But what do we want? Do we want it completely silent like it would be for real? Or I quite like a little sound, which is really dominated by breathing sounds within masks, which I think drew me into the scene. As breathing gets more rapid, you can feel the dread within those characters risking their lives. So overall, very interesting. I mean, what more can be said? A very worthy follow-up to the first film. And in some ways, this might be a little bit more enjoyable, only because it's played out a little more clearly, and when we get objectives relayed to us about what they're doing in each scene and what the objective is afterwards. I mean, they don't know certain things about the events of 2001, and this film is trying to explain quite a lot. I felt this played out a little more like a conventional movie, and not as much like a Kubrick movie, even though really this film didn't explain that much either. It just prompted a lot more thought. certainly in me. I'm going to give this 3.5 stars, which is a little higher than I gave 2001. This certainly very interesting and great film, 2010, the year we make contact. Now, on Peter Hyams, I was also suggested his film Capricorn 1, which I haven't seen before. That's about the moon landing conspiracy. Now, Kubrick himself was involved in some kind of conspiracy online for faking or helping to fake the moon landings. So this is all connected, isn't it, somehow? I'll try and look at Capricorn 1 sometime and hopefully bring you my thoughts. So thanks again for joining me. And to give you a little bit about myself, if you're new to my channel, I also review new movies, and I'm not sponsored by any of the studios, and I don't get free tickets. I was offered a couple of times in the past but turned them down. I want to watch what I want to watch, and I'm probably losing viewers by not being part of the marketing machine. But hey, I'd just like to talk about great movies with you. So thanks again for joining me. Like and subscribe like they always say, and hope to speak to you again soon. All the best. Take care.